Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you all about the photography tips that I think are most helpful when you're actually shooting. This has nothing to do with setup or anything like that. This is purely about when you're taking your shot and when you're looking at the picture that you have set up currently. If you find this video helpful, please give the video a like and then feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will be coming out with plenty more content for you very soon. So let's hop into it. The first and probably most important tip that I have for you is to focus on the star of your image. And this doesn't necessarily have to be one specific food or one item that you have in your shoot, because often you have those tabletop shoots where you have the whole spread of food and you want all of those to be in focus and you want kind of equal emphasis on each part. But in those shoots even, you do still have a star. The star being just like the different plates of food. It doesn't just have to be one, like I said. I have an example of this where I did not do it, just so you can see an example of kind of what not to do, but it's with this kind of like cookie and ice cream shot. I didn't use the correct aperture, so I was shooting what I thought was my star was down at the bottom with the ice cream and the cookie there. But then as you can see, the actual full cookie and even the ice cream scoop are like perfectly in focus. And that kind of draws attention from what I wanted to be the star of my photo. So don't do it like this. Instead, focus on the one part of your image that you want to be very crisp and you want to draw the viewer's eye to. In my picture, I wanted to draw viewer attention to the bottom of that photo, but instead it was kind of just all over the place because everything was in focus. The second tip I have for you is to create a scene or texture or just create an image that makes the viewer want to eat that food. There's no use in creating food photography that doesn't appeal to your audience, where the audience doesn't look at it and think that looks delicious, I wish I was there, I wish I could smell it, that sort of stuff. So you really want that to be the focus of your image as well. You want to focus on, the great texture of the picture or just how good the food tastes, and you want to convey that through your image. Otherwise, you're not really gonna communicate with your viewer effectively. An example of how not to do this is this apple crumble here. Apple crumble has tons of texture, and as you can see, there's a lot of texture going on here, but it's all just the same color and all the textures are kind of blending together, so it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look like very luscious or anything like that, and you don't really look at this picture and think, oh my gosh, I really want to eat that, because it just wasn't shot properly or styled properly. The way to style an apple crumble is definitely not in those small little bowls. It would have been like on a plate or just out and about so you could see the actual individual components of that dessert rather than everything kind of smushed together. And that's something you want to think about with your styling and how to present your food, is how would this read best to my viewer? Otherwise, this apple crumble is the perfect example. This is not reading like an apple crumble. This is kind of more so reading like a granola. And that's because I put it in that little bowl with the pan behind it. So if you're shooting something like that, definitely put it on a plate just so you can see everything. An example of something you would want to do is this grilled cheese here. Grilled cheese, the star of a grilled cheese is always the cheese. So in this one, you have all the cheese being pulled apart and you can see just how melty and how good that would be. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that sounds so good right now with the toasted bread and the melty cheese. It would just go down so well right now. And that's what you want to do. You want to convey that feeling of, oh my gosh, that would be so good. But you want to do it in a way where they can actually see the components of it, like the toasted bread and the cheese in this picture. You can actually see what would be delicious about eating the grilled cheese. The next tip I have for you is to go through multiple composition ideas before you call it a day. So before you wrap up your entire setup in your studio, make sure you go through every single composition idea that you have so that you get the best possible shot. And then also, if you get multiple good shots, you have more content. So it's kind of a win-win, An example that I have of this was actually when I first started food photography. I took pictures of this banana bread and I took lots of different positions because I still wasn't used to the styling element of food photography, so I didn't have that quite down. So as you can see in this first one, it's not great. The composition isn't great, but for like starting out, I thought it was decent. So the banana bread's at the bottom, you got the cloth coming in, and you've got all of that, and it's fine. But then I kept shooting and I kept going through different styles and different versions of my composition, and I ended up with this shot, which is I still think it's like a decent composition to this day, and it was the best one that I had. And I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't continue shooting after I got the picture that I thought was the best. So definitely go through multiple different versions of your composition. And if you get stuck, because often we hit that creative block, we don't know how to make this food look good, and we're just like, I don't know how to style this in a way that's interesting and in a way that's different, just go through the basics of what you know, because there's several different shots that always work. I say always, they nearly always work for any type of food. So just go through those shots. Even if they don't work, it will get your mind thinking about, okay, if I moved this here, would that look better? And then you start experimenting a bit, and that's when you get the best possible shot. Because otherwise you're not gonna get good shots, and they're all gonna look kind of boring, kind of and you can tell when the person behind the camera didn't feel happy about that shot. The next tip I have for you is to underexpose your image rather than overexposing it. And even, I would argue, rather than getting that exposure dead on right while you're shooting. And I know that there's gonna be some people that disagree with me on this, but I always think that it's better to slightly underexpose your image rather than risking overexposing it or even exposing it perfectly on your camera. And here's an example of one that was perfectly exposed on my camera, but then when I put it into Lightroom and started editing it, you can see there's bits of it that got blown out. And yes, I could have gone in and like spot edited those bits, but it just, in my opinion, it doesn't look as nice when you go into the picture post shooting and edit it from there. So I have this shot, it's fine. It's, like I said, it's not my best shot, but these are old pictures anyways. But so you can see I exposed it perfectly on my camera while I was shooting, but it ended up just a bit too bright in some places while I was editing. You want to avoid that. And then here's another example of one that was slightly overexposed while I was shooting that I didn't notice until after. And then a lot of bits of the image ended up being very blown out and very overexposed after I edited it in Lightroom. Even after I tried to spot edit some pieces on the lemon and some pieces of the background, I could not really fix the overexposure because it's so much harder to make an image darker after you've already taken it. Now here's an example of one that I underexposed while I was shooting so I could brighten it up in post. I started out with this brownie picture. As you can see, the composition isn't perfect because I was planning on cropping it in a bit more, but anyways. So I underexposed it while I was shooting, so that way when I went into post, I could brighten up the background and I could also kind of select areas that I wanted to be brighter while leaving a lot of the areas of like the brownies in particular darker, so I could get that kind of texture that I wanted from the brownies. Because if I had overexposed it, then the texture would have been completely lost from the brownies. So that's just an example of a tip that's kind of my personal opinion, but it hasn't failed me yet. Every single picture that I've underexposed has been easier to manipulate and edit in post. This next tip is one that I've had to learn time and time again the hard way, and I still do it all the time. And that is to get your scene as perfect as possible while you're shooting. If it's something that you can easily fix while you're sitting there shooting, but you're just like, oh, I don't know, I can't really be bothered to grab a paper towel and clean up that spill, I'll just edit it out later, just get up and do it. It makes it so easier and it saves you so much time afterwards because nobody wants to sit there editing little tiny spots out in Photoshop all day. You'd rather just do a quick edit and get your picture as perfect as possible while you're editing and not have to worry about all these little tiny details because you already worried about them earlier while you were shooting. An example of this was probably the worst time I did this, and it was this ice cream shot. And as you can't really see while you're looking at it, but it was something that I noticed and it bothered me. And I didn't notice even until after I'd gone in. I was just like, oh, the ice cream's kind of melted. I'll just clean it up when I go into Photoshop, and then nobody will know. And like nobody would probably notice even before that. But if you look at the bowl here, there's a ton of ice cream that's melted all over the bowl. And it's a super patterned bowl, so that's gonna be harder to edit. But I was like, no, I got it. It's white in there, so I can just like go in and fix it easily. And this edit took me hours to do, and I finally got rid of it, but I'm still just not happy with the image because I know what went into that, and I know that it's not as perfect as it could have been if I had just gone and wiped up some of the melted ice cream. It would have been like a 10-second fix if I had done it while I was shooting versus like a 2-hour fix after I was done shooting, just on that one spot I was working on for like 2 hours. So that's definitely one thing that I could not recommend more, is to clean up your shot as best as possible while you're shooting, because it literally saves you so much time and effort in post. So those are all the tips I have for you today. Today's video was a quick one, but I just wanted to give you quick little photography tips to kind of help you as best as I can. Just improve your photography, even if it is just the slightest amount. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, leave them in the comment section below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later.